everyone. All right, looks like okay. So we have some people here. That's great. Anyways, so before I begin this new class, let me just refresh for a second. Fine. So then we'll get going. Okay, now I believe my video is better. Fine. And you can see me better now. Okay. Hello, Christina. How are you? Welcome to the class. My God, what happened to Nivasini, Smriti, Tehsil? What happened, guys? I'm great. I'm great. What about you? Hello. How are you? Okay. Okay. That's great. Great. All right. So let's get moving. Fine. So we are finally beginning with a new chapter. And this new chapter starts with, or the topic of your new chapter is control and coordination. Fine. So what are we going to control and what are the things we are coordinating? Fine. So as you can see right now, I am taking your class and as I am speaking, my eyes are there towards you. My pen is scribbling down something. Fine. My speech is there. My other body functions are also going on. Like my heart is still beating. Right. I'm still breathing and the blood flow is there throughout my entire body. So all this is occurring continuously and in a coordinated manner. Fine. So everything is being regulated, is being monitored, and we all can perform multiple tasks at a single time. Right. So that requires a lot of control over our various organs and of course coordination. Fine. Hi Navasni. And this coordination and control is coordinated by two systems primarily within our body. One is our nervous system. So our nervous system is going to give out nerve impulses or electrical impulses which will flow from one end of our body to the okay. Relog in. Okay, relog in. Yes, thanks a lot. Guys, tell Niva to relog in once. So the nerve impulses or the so-called your electrical impulse will flow in my nerves from one end of my body and quickly they will be delivered to their destined place and they will do a specific action. Fine. They will lead my body to do a particular specific action. Fine. That is how my nervous system is controlling or governing my body. The second kind of system which is governing or controlling or coordinating, okay, well, nothing much, is the endocrine, of course. The endocrine system, which basically consists of a number of hormones or chemical messengers which are released from certain glands and these chemical messengers will go to a particular organ or particular part of my body and will cause a particular effect. Fine. So we'll be talking about all these things in detail, but right now we are going to begin our class with nervous system. Fine. So what is human nervous system? Let us understand that the main component of the nervous system is of course the nerve fibers. Fine. Which carry the nerve impulses from one place to another. And my nervous system is having nerve fibers and I have got brain, which is a major part of my nervous system. Right. There is spinal cord, which is coming down from my brain and is a major part of my nervous system. Well, Samay, I'm pretty good. Fine. We have nerve fibers, but one thing which is common, that's all right. It's all right. One thing which is common in all three of them, well, we have just begun our discussion on nervous system. Fine. So one thing which is common in all three of them is the presence of neuron, or the so-called your nerve cell. Fine. So that is something which is common in all three of them. And what does a neuron look like, and what does it do, and how does it do? We are all going to discuss it in detail here. Fine. So what are the structural and functional units of my nervous system? I think I just discussed it. It is my neurons, or my, yes, nerve cells. Right. So they are the basic structural and functional unit of my nervous system. Right. And my neuron is a single cell. Right. And this cell consists of three parts: a cell body, a dendrite, and axon. Fine. So there may be one dendrite, more dendrite, or no dendrite. So let me draw a neuron or a single cell of nervous system for you, or a nerve cell. So every nerve cell is having one long extension of its cytoplasm. Fine. So the nerve cell is always having one very long extension, and this long extension of my nerve cell is called as an axon. Fine. And in the center of my nerve cell, of course, I'll have the nucleus, and around it I will have the cytoplasm filled with endoplasmic reticulum, vacuoles, Golgi bodies, ribosomes, mitochondria, and all the other organelles which are found normally in an animal cell. Fine. So this is my normal animal cell. Right. So the main part of my cell is called as the cell body. Stoma. So the cell body of my nerve cell is called as stoma also. Fine. Now, I have made one small process which is coming out of my cell. I can have two small processes like this which are coming out of my cell. I can have three of them, or four, or maybe none. Fine. So these small things which are coming out and forming small fibers out of my nerve cell, these are called as dendrites. Yes, these are dendrites. Absolutely correct. So these are my dendrites. Fine. And their main function is to take up the electrical impulse or the nerve impulse from the adjoining neurons. So the adjoining nerve cells will give it the nerve impulse here. Fine. So this nerve cell is going to pick up the electrical signals from the adjoining nerve cells on its dendrite. So the main job of dendrites is to pick up the electrical signals. Right. And the electrical signals are passed on to the cell body of the neuron. Right. So that is where it is passed on. And also my dendrites can pick up the electrical signal, but they can also pick up the stimuli from the environment. So there are some sensory neurons where the dendrites are not picking up the electrical signals from some other neuron. They are directly sensing the stimuli. Fine. And this stimuli which is sensed by the dendrites, or let us say you may have a sensory cell. Okay, let me tell you one more thing here. So you may have something called as a sensory cell here, and the sensory cell may sense the stimuli which is coming. Fine. It will sense the stimuli, and after sensing the stimuli, it will release certain chemicals. These chemicals will go and bind to the neurons of, to the dendrites of the sensory neuron. Fine. And the dendrites will start producing an electrical impulse in the sensory neuron. Fine. So that is also another way how these dendrites may work. Fine. And once they pick up the sensory signal, they will get stimulated, they will generate an electrical impulse. The electrical impulse is passed to the cell body of the neuron, and from there it will move outwards towards the axon. Fine. And finally, the axon may terminate in one or more terminals. So finally, my axon is here. Okay, just a moment. So finally, my axon is here, and it may terminate in one or more terminals. So this is referred to as my axonal terminals. So at my axonal terminals, my axon will terminate and the electrical impulse will go here. So the electrical impulse is going here, all the way up to the end of the axon. Fine, I hope this much is clear to everyone. Yes, that's wonderful, wonderful. Okay, now my axons are always covered by a kind of cells. And these cells which are covering this long axon, which a nerve cell is having, these cells are termed as Schwann cells. These cells are termed as the Schwann cells. Right. So these are the Schwann cells. Now, in some neurons, what happens? The Schwann cells are further covered by a non-cellular layer, which is grayish in color. Fine. And it is made up of some, you can say, polycarbohydrates and some proteins. Fine. And some fats. So this is a fatty layer which is covering a non-cellular layer that is covering my neurons. Fine. And this layer is called as a myelin sheet. So there is myelin sheet present over the Schwann cells of some neurons. And at certain points, the myelin sheet is absent. So the points where the myelin sheet is absent, they are termed as the node of Ranvier. So node of Ranvier is that place where the myelin sheet is absent. Fine. And what happens in such neurons which have got node of Ranvier and myelin sheet over them? So myelin sheet offers an extra insulating cover over the axon. Fine. And it also ensures that if you have an axon and the axon has got Schwann cells over it, so this axon has got Schwann cells over it. Fine. And it has got myelin sheet, which is broken at certain points, called as node of Ranvier. Fine. So in such axons, how the electrical impulses travel? Let us see. So in such axons, the electrical impulse will simply jump from one node of Ranvier to the next node of Ranvier. Fine. So the electrical impulse is conducted pretty quickly from one node of Ranvier to next node of Ranvier in such axons. Fine. And those axons which are not covered by the myelin sheet, but just by Schwann cells, there the electrical impulse will have to go in a slower fashion throughout the axon. Fine. It cannot jump from one node of Ranvier to another. So that is the advantage of a myelinated neuron. So myelinated neuron is that neuron which has got a myelin sheet over its axon. So we have got myelinated neurons and of course non-myelinated neurons as well as non-myelinated neurons are there. Fine. So these two new type of neurons are present in my body. Fine. And in my non-myelinated neurons, of course, the transmission of electrical impulse is slower. So here the same story. Fine, we have a neuron with a dendrite or one or more dendrites are there. Fine, so they receive information from the axon of adjacent neurons, or they will receive the chemicals of the sensory cell. Fine, which is sensing the stimuli, and they will generate an electrical impulse in the cell body or in the axon. Fine, and the electrical impulse will go down the axon. Okay, then the cell body contains a nucleus, mitochondria, and other organelles that is concerned with the maintenance and growth of the cell. Fine, we have already discussed the node of Ranvier refers to the gap between two adjacent myelin sheets. Okay, what is the advantage of myelin sheet in an axon? I think we have just talked about it, the advantage of myelin sheet in an axon. Let us move forward and let us quickly talk about the types of neurons based on their function. Fine. So there are three types of neurons based on their function. The first kind of neuron is picking up the stimuli directly from the environment or through a sensory cell. So there is a sensory cell. This sensory cell is picking up the stimuli or is sensing a stimuli in the environment. Fine. And it is going to generate some chemicals which are going to be delivered to the dendrite of some neuron. This is going to be delivered to the dendrite or directly, if the neuron does not have a dendrite, to the stoma or cell body of the neuron. So directly the chemical will go over there, fine, on the plasma membrane of the stoma or on the plasma membrane of the dendrite, and it will activate the neuron, and the electrical impulse will enter the cell body of this neuron. Fine, and this neuron through its axon will send out the electrical impulse to other neuron. Fine. So the neuron which is sensing the stimuli or which is receiving the first information of the stimuli and is passing it on to other neurons is called as a sensory neuron. Fine. So my first neuron, which is sensing the stimuli and passing the information of the sensation of the stimuli, is called as a sensory neuron. So sensory neuron will sense the stimulus and will send the nerve impulse to the next neurons. Fine. So the neurons which are receiving the nerve impulse from some other neuron are called as interneuron. So interneurons are those neurons which are receiving the nerve impulse from some other neuron. Fine. And then we have got a motor neuron. So what is a motor neuron? Let us discuss that. So let us say this sensory neuron has simply detected a pinprick on my finger. Fine. So immediately a sensation of pain is going to my brain and a sensation of prick is going to my spinal cord via my sensory neuron. Fine. So sensory neuron information to interneurons. Interneurons will send this information to my spinal cord. The spinal cord will send this information to some more interneurons. These interneurons will send the information to motor neurons. Motor neurons will send a nerve impulse through their axon to the muscles of my finger. Fine. And the muscles of my finger will twitch in response to the electrical stimuli, and I will move my hand away or I will move my finger away from the pinprick. Fine. So therefore, motor neuron is the one which has a job of delivering the electrical impulse to the organ which has to act. Fine. So the organ which has to act is called the effector organ. So the electrical impulse to the effector organ is given by the motor neuron. So right now, as my tongue is moving, in response to my wish and will. So the motor neurons are coming to my tongue and they are stimulating the muscles of my tongue and telling it to move. Fine. So my motor neurons are causing the movement. And also motor neurons can also lead to secretion of some chemicals from some glands, like my tear glands, right? They will start secreting tear if motor neuron over there goes and give an electrical impulse to my tear gland. Fine. So they will start releasing out tears. So we have various kinds of motor neurons causing various kind of responses from various effector organs. Fine. So I think sensory neuron, interneuron, and motor neuron is clear to us. Guys, is it clear? Okay. Yes, clear. Okay, that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let us talk of different kind of neurons based on their structure. Fine. So I can have a neuron without any dendrite. So let us say this is a neuron and this neuron has no dendrite and all it has got is one axon. So such neurons which are without any dendrite but just an axon are called as unipolar neuron. So every neuron will have at least one axon or will always have one axon. Fine, whether they have a dendrite or not. So how this neuron is going to receive the nerve impulses or the stimulus? Directly on its cell body. Fine, so directly on the plasma membrane of its cell body, it's going to receive the electrical impulses as well as the stimuli chemicals from the sensory cell. Fine, and in response to that, it is going to generate the electrical impulses inside its stoma or the cell body and pass it down its axon. Fine. So this is a unipolar neuron. Why? Uni means one. Pole means it has got only one pole, which is an axon. So it is a unipolar neuron. And if my neuron has got one dendrite and one axon, so it is a bipolar neuron. It has got two poles. One of the poles is the dendrite, another pole is the axon. Fine. And a typical neuron that we had drawn in the first scene, which has got so many dendrites, a typical neuron with multiple dendrites, and one axon is a multipolar neuron. Fine. So all its dendrite will be utilized to take up the electrical impulse or the chemicals of the stimuli. Fine. And they will generate the electrical impulse in its cell body or stoma, which is passed down its axon. So this is a multipolar neuron. I hope it is clear. Yes, bipolar will have only one dendrite. Bi means two. So it has two poles. Definitely one pole will be axon. So the other pole will be one dendrite. Fine. Okay. So this is my bipolar neuron. Unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar. Yes. Okay. So how does my nervous system works? So I have a stimuli and stimuli is picked up by a sensory cell. Right, or you can say a receptor cell, which can sense the stimuli. The receptor cell can be the sensory neuron in some cases directly, or it can be some other cell, and this cell will release some chemicals, which will activate the sensory neuron, and a sensory neuron will generate an electrical impulse. It will be passed on to various conducting neurons or interneurons. So we have got another name for interneurons, that is your conducting neurons. And through conducting neuron or interneurons, the nerve impulse goes to the brain or the spinal cord, right? And from here, the nerve impulse is back to the conducting neurons or interneurons, and from here to the motor neuron, the motor neuron will send the signal or electrical impulse to the effector organ. And the effector organ will show the response. Right? So this is the loop of the working of our nervous system. Isn't it? Yes. Yes, that is the way it works. Okay. Now let us come down to different thing about the nervous system. So my nervous system consists of two parts. And if I draw a diagram of my nervous system, I will draw it like this. With one brain. Fine. And okay, let me draw the brain a bit like this. And then I have the spinal cord coming down all the way from my brain. Fine. So my brain is a bunch of billions and trillions of neurons. Similarly is the case with my spinal cord. So I have a spinal cord, I have a brain. There are many other supporting cells, of course, along with the neurons. Fine, in my brain and spinal cord. And from my brain, many nerve fibers are coming out. And the nerve fibers which are coming out from my brain are called as cranial nerves. Fine. And the nerve fibers which are coming out of my spinal cord are called as spinal nerves. So they are the spinal nerves. Fine. So that means I have got two sections of my nervous system. One section just consists of brain and spinal cord, and this is called as central nervous system. So my central nervous system consists of my brain and spinal cord. Fine. And all the nerves which are coming out of my brain and my spinal cord, and these nerves will go to various parts of my body and they will branch out over there. Nerves will go into my hand and then they will branch out in my fingers, right? So they will branch out in every part of my body. Fine. So these nerves which are coming out of my brain and spinal cord, and they will branch out. So they will form the so-called peripheral nervous system. This is my peripheral nervous system. Yes, PNS, absolutely correct. Right. So my PNS or peripheral nervous system is further composed of two parts. One part is somatic nervous system. The other part is autonomic nervous system. Fine. Now there are certain sections of my body which I can move as per my wish and will. Like my hand, like my finger, like even my tongues and lips. Fine. But there are other parts of my body which I cannot move as per my wish and will. Like my heart muscles, like the muscles of my esophagus. Fine, yes, involuntary. Right, voluntary and involuntary. So my somatic nervous system consists of those nerve fibers in which the nerve impulse or the electrical impulse will flow only under my command. Fine, like my finger. If I feel like moving the nerve impulse in my finger, then only my finger will move. Otherwise, it will not. Fine. So, such nerves which are under my command or the nerve impulse in them flows under my command are a part of my voluntary nervous system or somatic nervous system. Fine. And they will govern my skeletal muscles, the muscles which are attached to my bone and which I can move with my own wish and will. Right. And then I have autonomic nervous system, which contains those nerve fibers in which the nerve impulse does not flow under my command. Fine. Like the nerve impulse is going to my esophagus, right? There's not flow under my command. So that is autonomic nervous system. Okay. Now autonomic nervous system is further divided into two parts, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic. So we'll discuss about sympathetic and parasympathetic more in detail as we move forward. Fine. Or let me discuss it here itself. Okay. So when I say sympathetic nervous system, it basically consists of many of my spinal nerves which are originating from my thorax and my lumbar area. Fine. So these nerves are originating from my thorax and my lumbar area below my thorax. Fine. Or my abdominal area. So these spinal nerves are forming. No, this is the middle spinal cord. Fine. From the thorax to my abdomen. Okay. So this is a part of my sympathetic nervous system. And when the nerves of this system is activated, what they will do? They will make a lot of adrenaline flow in my blood. Fine. Or noradrenaline flow in my blood. Fine. So what is adrenaline or noradrenaline? We will discuss. So sympathetic nervous system nerves, one of them will go to my adrenal gland and will tell my adrenal gland to release noradrenaline, a hormone, right? And when this noradrenaline is released into my blood supply, my blood pressure will rise up. My heartbeat will increase. Fine. My pupils will dilate. Right. And what else will happen? My sugar will be released in my blood supply. A lot of sugar will be there. Fine. And I will become more active. Right. My sweat glands will be active. I will be very active. Right. And I am on an alert. My digestion process will slow down. So no digestive juices will be released by my digestive organs at that point of time. And now I am on an alert, and my sympathetic nervous system alerts me and tells me there is a danger. So either you run away or you fight with it. So then my fight or flight response is activated when my sympathetic nervous system is active. Fine. As duct expands, which duct expands? Okay, you mean to say sweat glands duct expand? Yes, no. Then my breathing will be more. Yeah, the flow of hormones is more, right? So noradrenaline will be more there in my blood. My breathing rate will increase, my heartbeat will increase, my BP will increase, my pupils will dilate, my digestion will slow down. Fine. Less of digestive juices will be released by my stomach and intestine. See, during that time, less of digestive juices are released because now I don't want to go in for digestion. I want to utilize my power. Fine. So, a lot of sugar which is stored in my muscles will be released in my blood supply so that it is available as a source of energy. Okay, so that is what sympathetic nervous system does. And, okay, the nerves of the sympathetic nervous system generally join at some point. So, many nerves of the sympathetic nervous system will join at some point and will form a mass of neurons. Fine. And this mass of neurons is called as a ganglia. So this is called as a ganglia. Fine. So ganglia is a plural word, and one singular mass of neurons is called as a ganglion. So you can see we have nerve fibers which are coming out of spinal cord, and the preganglionic nerve fibers, the nerve fibers before the ganglion, fine, are short. So in sympathetic nervous system, my preganglionic nerve fibers are short. And after the ganglion, long nerve fibers comes out. Fine. And my postganglionic nerve fibers are long. Right? And in my parasympathetic nervous system, my preganglionic nerve fibers are long and my postganglionic nerve fibers are short. Fine. So these are some structural details, and the nerves of my parasympathetic nervous system will be some cranial nerves. So there will be some cranial nerves, some nerves coming out of my cranium or my brain, and some sacral nerves. See, at some point, these nerves enter into a mass of neurons called as ganglion. Fine. So the parasympathetic nervous system consists of nerve fibers which are basically either cranial or sacral, the last part of my spinal cord. So these nerve fibers are arising from the cranial or the sacral region, and they have very long preganglionic nerve fiber. So they have very long preganglionic nerve fiber and very short postganglionic nerve fiber. Fine. Guys, is this much clear? And very short postganglionic nerve fibers. So the ganglions in this case are very close to the body. Fine. And in the sympathetic case, they were close to the spinal cord. Okay. Another important thing, my parasympathetic nervous system will work opposite to that of sympathetic nervous system. So basically, it will bring my blood pressure down. It will bring my heartbeat down and will bring it normal. It will bring my rate of breathing back to normal. Fine. It will promote my digestion. So the release of gastric juices or digestive enzymes from my stomach and my intestine and my pancreas and my gallbladder will increase. So digestion is promoted. My pupils will again contract. Fine. So now this is promoting feeding. During relaxation time, my parasympathetic nervous system is active. Fine. So it promotes feeding. So feed and breathe. That is what it says. Fine. So that kind of activities it promotes. Just relax. So that is the work of parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic increases rate of processes in parasympathetic. Yes, absolutely correct. Except for digestion. So digestion rate is increased by parasympathetic and decreased by sympathetic. Okay. So I have given you a lot of extra info which is not even there in your books. Now, let us talk about brain has got three parts, the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. I'll quickly find out a nice image of it and clip it here for us so that it is easy for us to understand. Fine. So, okay. Just a moment. Okay, yes, here I have got a beautiful image. So I'll just clip it here and things will be absolutely clear to us. Just a moment. Okay, okay. So let's bring it here. Okay, that's wonderful. Now you can see, so the biggest part of my brain is my forebrain. Fine. So my forebrain is the largest part of my brain, which is indicated with the orange color here. Right. And the small part of the brain, which is there indicated with the green color, is the midbrain. It is there in the center. Fine. And the pink region indicates the hindbrain. Fine. So we'll discuss quickly what all. Oh my God. I think I lost my image, so I need to bring it back. So I need to discuss quickly what all. Yes, it's back. So what all is there in my forebrain and what all is there in my hindbrain and midbrain. So we'll discuss all those things more in detail as we move forward. Fine. Okay. So my next image, which is indicating the forebrain, and the largest portion of my forebrain is my cerebrum. Fine. And my cerebrum occupies 70% of my brain. And my cerebrum is divided into two halves. Fine. So two cerebral hemispheres I have. One is, yes, the one is the right cerebral hemisphere. The other one is called as the left cerebral hemisphere. Fine. So I have the right cerebral hemisphere and the left cerebral hemisphere. Fine. So we have got two cerebral hemispheres. And one more important thing I would like to add up over here. So if this is my, let us say, forebrain, fine. So the outer region of my forebrain is called as cerebral cortex. Yes, we have the pituitary gland in it. We will talk about it. So the outer region is called as cerebral cortex. And the inner region of my forebrain is called as cerebral medulla. So that is my cerebral medulla. Fine. And one more important thing which we have observed over here in my structure of brain, I have got so many intestine-like things over here. Fine. So this intestine-like thing is actually there. Yes, cerebrum is 70% of my, yes, convolutions are there. Fine. So these things which are swollen are called as gyre. Fine. So gyre is a plural word for the swellings on my brain, on my forebrain. Fine. And the singular word for it is gyrus. Fine. And the depressions between this gyrus, the plural word for it is sulci. Fine. So sulci is a plural word for the depressions between this gyrus. Fine. And the singular word is sulcus. Okay. Why we have this outgrowths and depressions? That is to increase the surface area of the brain so that my cerebral cortex can accommodate more neurons. Fine. So it can accommodate more neurons. Yes, curved, not curved neurons. See, if the surface is curved, right, so you can have more neurons here rather than a straight surface. Right, so that's why the surface is curved. The neurons are not curled. The neurons are not curled. So my forebrain consists of my cerebrum, my thalamus, and hypothalamus. Fine, that's all right. That's all right. So my forebrain consists of my cerebrum, and a region below the cerebrum is the thalamus. Below the thalamus, I have a structure hypothalamus, and below the hypothalamus, I have an organ called as pituitary. The word hypo means below. Fine. So below the thalamus, I have the hypothalamus. Fine. So let me draw these things for all of you here. So let us say this is again my forebrain, which I am drawing. Fine. And this part of my forebrain is thalamus. From the thalamus, this region is, let us say, my hypothalamus. And from the hypothalamus, a small stick-like thing goes down, and this is called as infundibulum. My God, I'm giving so much of extra info. I don't know why. So we have infundibulum, and at the end of infundibulum, I have a P-shaped organ, which is called as my pituitary gland. So this is my pituitary gland. Fine. So this is how my cerebrum is. So cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. Diencephalon is a part of the forebrain located below the cerebrum. Fine. So diencephalon is actually this part of the brain is the whole diencephalon. So this is the whole diencephalon. So, okay. So thalamus is situated between the cerebral cortex and the midbrain. Fine. So it is situated between the cerebral cortex and my midbrain. Okay, thalamus. And the hypothalamus contains areas which control my urge for eating, my thirst center, feel the sensation of thirst. That is also controlled by my hypothalamus. My body temperature is regulated by my hypothalamus. And many other functionalities of my body are regulated by the neurons of my hypothalamus. Fine. And my forebrain contains regions which have the sensitivity to sense the various stimuli which I perceive, like the stimuli of sight, the stimuli of sound, the stimuli of touch, the stimuli of taste, fine, the stimuli of smell. So all the 5 sense organs are linked primarily to my forebrain. Fine. So we'll talk about the 4 parts, and it is also very important for my memory and my emotions. Fine. So we'll quickly talk about the main parts of my forebrain as we proceed forward. So let me move on to those parts first. Okay. So these are the lobes of my forebrain. I have got occipital lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, olfactory lobe. So let me quickly come down to a slide of it, and let us discuss more about it in the next slide. Fine. So I'm quickly going to deal over with the lobes of our brain. Okay, so here I have a wonderful slide or image. And let me just load it over. So I guess it will happen quickly. Okay. Now we can see the slide very quickly. Fine. And these are all regions of my forebrain. So in the front, I have got the frontal lobe. Fine. So the front portion is the frontal lobe, and it helps in problem solving. My emotions are governed by my frontal lobe. Right. So when I am very emotional or some kind of emotion, yes, it's quite colorful. When emotions are running in my head, the frontal lobe neurons are working a lot. Fine. So the area of my head which is clear of my hairs is actually containing my frontal lobe, isn't it? So it also helps my reasoning or my judgment, my speech or my language abilities also come from my frontal lobe. My voluntary motor actions by my frontal lobe. Fine. My voluntary muscle movements. Okay, coming down to my parietal lobe. So parietal lobe is basically helps in knowing right from left. It helps in the sensation of touch, in reading, in body orientation. It is helpful. Occipital lobe, which is basically here, helps in my vision, in my color perception. Fine. Temporal lobe, understanding of language, my behavior, my memory, my ability to hear. All that is controlled by my temporal lobe, and a small part of my frontal lobe. Okay, oh my god, I lost my image again. Just a moment. Okay, we have our image back. So, a small part of my frontal lobe, somewhere I can say over here, I have the occipital lobe. That is the area which helps in sensing the smell of something. Fine. So that is my occipital lobe. So these are my 5 lobes of the brain. So occipital lobe is actually more a part of my frontal lobe. So that's why we don't show occipital lobe pretty often. Sorry, not the occipital, it is the olfactory. Sorry, it is not the occipital, it is the olfactory. Just I have mixed match the things. Yes, it is olfactory. Sorry, it is olfactory. Thanks for that correction, Krishna. So it is my olfactory lobe, which is generally a part of my frontal lobe. Okay. Yes. Okay. So let's move over. We are done with our lobes of the brain, and let us quickly talk about my midbrain. So the midbrain is situated somewhere over here. Well, what is referred to the midbrain here is not the midbrain. It is something else. It is a band of tissue which is there between my right hemisphere and left hemisphere. So let us say this is my right hemisphere and this hand is my left hemisphere of cerebrum. Fine. So in between you can see my thumbs. Fine. So this thumbs is a band of tissue in the center which is joining my right and left hemisphere, and this band of tissue which is joining my 2 cerebral hemisphere is called as corpus callosum. So corpus callosum. Fine. So that is the name of this band of tissue, right? So that is my corpus callosum, and my midbrain is over here. So this area I have my midbrain. Yes, such weird names. Right. So let us again see the location of my midbrain. So you can see this is my midbrain. And this is my corpus callosum. Fine. So this is my corpus callosum, and below that I have my midbrain. And my midbrain performs some important functions. Let us see what are they. So it is the smallest region of the brain that connects the cerebrum with the hindbrain. Fine. It has regions that are concerned with the sense of sight and hearing. Midbrain and hindbrain together are called as a brainstem. So my brainstem is formed by the combination of my midbrain and my hindbrain. Just a moment. Okay. So if I'm going to combine my midbrain and my hindbrain together, So this whole thing is my brainstem. So this whole thing is my brainstem. My midbrain and my hindbrain. Fine. And let us talk about the various parts of my hindbrain. That is also very interesting. We have just another 4 minutes left. So let us utilize it. So you can see one thing is there at the back of my hindbrain, and this is here precisely. Fine, here. So this is called as the cerebellum. This is termed as the cerebellum, and the main function of this cerebellum is to maintain my body balance. If you hit someone very badly on the cerebellum, that person will feel dizzy. Fine, they will lose their body balance. And if you drink too much of alcohol, again, your cerebellum is affected. Fine, so cerebellum is responsible for my posture and my body balance. Guys, are you all there with me? Okay. Then I have this area called as pons. So it is also called as pons vironi or just pons. Fine. So pons contain some nerve fibers which connect various parts of the brain with each other. Okay. Then I have got a long stem-like thing coming out, and this is called as medulla oblongata, and this later on continues to form my spinal cord. So this will form the spinal cord later. Okay. So this is forming my spinal cord, and medulla controls my many functions. Fine. What are those functions? Let us see. So it controls my respiration, my cardiovascular activity, my activity of the heart, and the secretions of my digestive glands, of my stomach, of my intestine, of my pancreas, of my bile duct is controlled by the medulla oblongata. Fine. So this is about my brain, and we'll be discussing more on the spinal cord. Finally, so spinal cord is basically, as we know, is extension of my brain, right? So it is extension of my brain, and the whole of the spinal cord is covered by many sets of small bones. So there are hollow bones which are covering the spinal cord, and these hollow bones are called as vertebrae. Fine. So I have a vertebrae like this, which is hollow. Fine. And inside the vertebrae, my spinal cord goes or runs. Yes, but the starting is not covered. Yes. So I have my vertebrae till here. Right, till here. You can feel your uppermost vertebrae. Okay, we'll talk about the cerebrospinal fluid later. Fine. Yes. Yes, so we have the vertebrae, right? We have 7 vertebrae in our neck, and then as we move down, we have got so many vertebrae. So in total, we have got 26 vertebrae, right, which makes my vertebral column or my backbone. Right, so we'll be talking more about it in our next class. Fine. So let us end it over here as we don't have much time. So bye-bye, everyone. See you all in the next class. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.